Kaitlyn Bristowe and Tayshia Adams set up to fail as hosts of the Bachelor franchise. Hey everyone, welcome back to another shared news panel. We are going to discuss what is going on with Chris Harrison and Kaitlyn Bristowe. But before we do, if you are new here, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss out on any Bachelor Nation updates. As always, I'm your host, Morgan Wright, joined today by Kayla G and Kayla T. Were you guys surprised to see Kaitlyn Bristowe going on Chris Harrison's podcast? There's been a lot of back and forth between these two the last couple of weeks playing out in the headlines. So before we really dive into what was said, what did you think of the move of Kaitlyn going on Chris's podcast, KG?
I was very surprised. I knew Chris Harrison was going to mention it because at the beginning of his podcast, he's like the biggest headlines and usually, covers all the ones that include him. But for her, I was shocked. Maybe I'm speechless because I really was not expecting it.
Yeah, I think it was interesting for me. When I saw it, my brain immediately went to, so that whole thing that came out with Kaitlyn saying, Chris didn't answer me and all that whole thing. Y'all know what I'm talking about? That was all planned because there's no way Kaitlyn is too busy. Chris has a podcast schedule. She definitely was set to come on his podcast. And so they kind of knew when to put out the news and kind of bait everyone to go listen. But, we have to dive into what they had to say because it was interesting.
I mean, the title is the most dramatic podcast ever. So it's like par for the course that we're talking about this drama now. So they were discussing, like you said, Kayla T, this headline that Chris ghosted Kaitlyn. But ended up spending most of the time on the podcast talking about their thoughts on the situation that Kaitlyn and Tayshia were put in by the Bachelor franchise. First, did you guys like Kaitlyn and Tayshia as mentors on Katie and Michelle's season?
I know it's unpopular, but I did. I really liked, because they're just two of my favorite bachelorettes. So I was excited to see them on my screen. And it was nice to see someone, with Chris Harrison gone, it was nice to see someone who I knew and felt connected to.
Yeah, it's interesting you said I didn't know it was an unpopular opinion because I felt the same. I think that when they came on, it kind of showed me something I felt like the hosts were missing, which was like an actual personal connection with the lead that you believed in. And they brought something that I thought was invaluable, like to be able to relate to Michelle, for Tayshia to have a moment with Michelle on the balcony while she's crying, and Kaitlyn with Katie, and when she was in the bathroom crying. It's like those moments were like, I'm kind of more bought in as them leading the season because they're more involved. So I really enjoyed it. I loved it.
Yeah, one thing I think that thinking back to the times when we were watching this live, I would say a common complaint from viewers is that it felt odd that there were two of them, right? Especially when they would come in and they would say, this is the final rose of the night. And it's like only one person is speaking. Why do they both need to move in there? And Chris actually addressed this point on the podcast, saying that they were set up to fail in their roles because it's not a two-person job. Kaitlyn even said it felt less professional with the two of them, them having giggles in the corner and them eating the popcorn and all the little kind of gimmicky things that they did versus a single host. I mean, you don't see Jesse Palmer doing any of that. Kaitlyn also said they were thrown into it with no training. Do you think, Kayla T, that it would have worked out long term if they would have just chosen one or the other? Or do you think this was kind of their plan all along to bring in two fan favorites until they figured out what they were going to do long term?
Yeah, great point. I think that this is what they plan to do until they figure something out that was long term, whether that be testing out both of them at the same time to see maybe we'll just pick one at some point, or you guys are just placeholders till we get a Jesse Palmer, But yeah, I think that's a good point. In what Kaitlyn was saying, that it was awkward. It was awkward for both of them to kind of be sharing the hostiness of it. It was a little it was kind of clumsy to me. But I don't know. Everyone knew the Chris Harrison thing. I felt like I understood. They lost a host. They need to just kind of figure it out, and you're gonna be thrown into it a little bit, and it's gonna be a little haphazard. But
Yeah, and Kayla, to your point, there was all these question marks around, are they hosts? Are they mentors? What exactly are they doing there? And Caitlyn even alluded to the reason why they were called mentors instead of hosts is that they didn't have to pay them as much money as they did with Chris Harrison. I can assume that they definitely aren't paying, they weren't paid the same as Jesse Palmer. So, KG, do you think that while the Bachelor franchise was kind of in disarray during the season, because these were make or break seasons in the franchise with everything that was going on, do you think money was a factor in the title that they gave Caitlyn and Tayshia, and that's why they left it a little bit confusing for them?
Yeah, I mean, they had two hosts, right, or two mentors. And so, right there, because there's more than one of them, they're going to probably have a certain budget and have to split it into two, right? You would think. So, I do
Mhm.
think that money kind of had to be in play there.
Yeah, Chris even said in the episode that he wished Caitlyn and Tayshia would have called him when they were in negotiations to help. Now, I find this very interesting because on one hand, he's saying, "You guys call me, I'd love to help." When a week before, Caitlyn is saying, "I DM'd him 10 times and he's not answering me." So, like, do you really think that he would have helped them negotiate? Kayla T, why don't you give us your thoughts? And then I have a follow up question for you, KG.
1000%. I'm piggybacking off of what you're saying, picking up what you're putting down, Morgan. Like,
Yeah.
Chris is just so funny to me with that. It's like, first of all, why would they feel comfortable reaching out to you when the whole franchise like fired you from something that was like really messy and
Mhm.
controversial? Like, they're not just going to be like, hey, like, give us tips when, yeah, it's, they don't know what you like, they're not going to reach out to you and it be like a comfortable, they're not going to be comfortable doing that. And then, yeah, exactly. Like, you weren't answering a DM. So why would I think you're going to answer my phone call? But yeah, I just think Chris Harrison and his kind of hubris of like, you should have asked me for tips of negotiating. Like, they have teams, right? Like Tayshia and Caitlyn have
Mhm.
PR teams. And that's probably why in that contract, it's like, well, y'all need to put mentor and not host, because if you're going to say they're a host, you need to pay them this. And they're like, okay, well, that was probably in there somewhere. And these two girls are like, hey, I'm on the franchise. This is a leg up for me in my
Yeah.
career. Like, they were going to take it anyway. So
At the end of the day, KG, do you think that the franchise used Caitlyn and Tasha until they knew what they were going to do? And use them in the sense of paid them less, knew the whole time that neither of them were going to get this position full time. And then once they decided it was going to be Jesse Palmer, kind of chalked it up to, oh, well, you guys were just mentors. You weren't actually going to be the hosts.
Yes, I would say yes, because specifically how they handled the exit. I know Caitlyn's was vocal in this podcast and has been before how she didn't see it coming. She thought so maybe they were even misleading Caitlyn and Tayshia of thinking that this was leading them to a recurring role when really um that was not their plan all along. So in short, yes, I do think that they were a little taken advantage of.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Kayla T?
yeah, no, I agree. I think, I think it's kind of both. It's like both and, it's yes, they were a little taken advantage of, but at the same time, I think it was the nature of it all of just kind of like, hey, this is what we have to work with. We're kind of throwing this together. We got the rug pulled under of us with the whole Chris Harrison. We had to kick him out because people are upset, for a good reason. But yeah, I think they were just kind of like having to haphazardly put it together. And honestly, Caitlyn and Tayshia, they have to rise up in their kind of pull of what they can really ask for. I mean, there's only so much that you can really complain about. If that makes sense, you get where I'm going from. It's like
Yeah.
they're still coming up in terms of being a host. Like, this is a big opportunity for them to just show what they can do. And look, Tayshia went and did the MTV Awards, like what, or VMAs,
Mhm.
like a year or two later. So it's like it kind of, works out. Caitlyn's got this big, huge podcast now. So, it worked out for them in the end. But, Bachelor Nation franchise, yeah, they're going to take advantage of some people.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider it is such a coveted position, right? So
Mhm.
even I'm just trying to put myself in Caitlyn or Tasha's shoes. Even if I go into that knowing that this is not final, that, it's probably not going to be me, I'm still taking the opportunity because what you said, Kayla T, even in however many seasons that they got to do it, it opened other doors for them. It prolonged their time on television. They still did get paid for it. Unfortunately, that's show business, like it is what it is
Yeah.
and it sucks a lot of the times, but I mean, what can you do? And now we have Jesse Palmer, which everyone seems to be kind of indifferent about. So let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, ring the bell so you don't miss out on any Bachelor Nation updates. I'm your host, Morgan Wright, joined by Kayla G and Kayla T. All of our social media handles are on the screen right now. If you want to give us a follow, come say hello. We can talk more about all things Bachelor Nation in the DMs. It goes down in the DMs. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you back next time. Bye.